Good afternoon, boys. Mrs. Woodruff and I decided to talk to you to tell you what you missed today and provide you some resources because you missed a very important lesson. What we're looking at here today is your page and just making sure that you know where to get the sheets that you get. So if we go to Learning Tasks, and under Learning Tasks, they'll load in and you can see your SAC Chemistry Will It Precipitate. When you click on that, I had to click over here, but you click on that, you'll see there's the handout down here that you can download so you have the same sheet. Okay, I'm closing that and bringing up the sheet so you can see it on the screen. Here it is here. Okay, so Mrs. Woodruff and I worked with Mouquet and
Eclair.
Eclair to do this. And we thought it was very important that we explain it to you very clearly. So what you already should have by this time from last lesson is this sheet here, where you already collected the information about your reaction. So you should have right now these circled yes or no appropriately. Okay, this should be the yes or no circled here. That's what you have right now. What you need to do for this lesson, in order to catch up, is you need to do a couple of things. There are 6 things in total to do. You have to fill in this column, the products column. You'll have to fill in the word equation column, and we'll have to work from there. Okay? So, first of all, the products column. What we are talking about here is a reaction. And if a reaction occurs, a chemical reaction occurs, you'll know it because a precipitate formed. So that means what, Mrs. Woodruff?
The precipitate is that a solid.
The insoluble solid. The color change or the thing you saw floating, so you know whether there was one or not. You took pictures, so you should have that information. So if there was a solid, for example, as there was for reaction number 3, then you will have a reaction occur. In other words, copper sulfate will react with potassium iodide. And the way they react is by changing partners. So the copper will leave the sulfate, so it will just become copper on its own, and it will attach to the iodide. So you're going to get copper iodide as one of the products. So I'm going to write that in here. Copper iodide. What do you think the other product would be, Mr. Woodruff?
Well, if you've attached copper to iodide, the other one would be potassium sulfate.
So the other product would be potassium sulfate. Okay. What about for ones where there was no precipitate, Mrs. Woodruff?
Well, they don't react, so there would be no change.
So there'd be no change in that case. The products would be the reactants. There would be no change. So the products would be the reactants. Okay, so what would happen then is we'd need to do the balanced equation for this. So for these ones, there's no need to draw a balanced equation. No chemical reaction means there's nothing to write in the equation, so we can just leave that blank. So what we're going to do this now is we're going to look just a little bit lower on the page for this one. So we're going to find copper iodide. In your sheet, you will find copper iodide listed over here. Here is the word for copper iodide, and here is the chemical symbol. So I'm going to take the chemical symbol for copper iodide, and I'm going to put it up in there for the product. But I need to first start with copper sulfate. So I find copper sulfate first. Here it is. There's the copper sulfate. I can copy this, but you'd have to write it down. So copper sulfate plus, oops, sorry, I'm down too low. Copper sulfate plus potassium iodide. Where's the potassium iodide? Here it is. The potassium iodide has the symbol Ki. So I'm copying that one and putting it up here as well.
And leaving a little space just in case we need to.
So I'm putting a space before it. And that is going to become, so I put an arrow in here. As we said, copper iodide. So I grab copper iodide. And I'm going to put in there, remember to leave a space plus leave a space potassium sulfate. So I look for potassium sulfate and there it is there. Now the problem with that is we haven't balanced the equation. So we're going to look, the important thing to remember is on both sides of the arrow, here's the arrow that says a reaction is good, you have to have the same amount of things. So we can see there is just one copper here. And how many coppers over here, please, Mrs. Woodruff?
Just the one.
Right, so we have the same number of coppers. That's good. And we have how many sulfates here?
One sulfate.
And how many sulfates over there?
One on that side.
That's good. So then we have one potassium here. And how many potassiums over here?
But two potassiums on that side.
So we can't have that. So we need to tell ourselves that there is more potassium on this side. This 2 affects both of those things. So this says there's 2 potassiums. So we go back to the beginning. Anytime we write a number, we start again. So we go back to the beginning and say, how many coppers?
There's one copper on that side and one copper on the other side.
And then we have how many sulfates?
So it's one sulfate on one side and one sulfate on the other.
Now how many potassiums?
2 potassiums
There's
on
2.
that side and also 2 on the other, K2.
And how many iodides over here?
2 iodides
because that 2 affects both letters. So there's 2 iodides on this side, and how many on this side?
2 on that side.
So we have the same of everything, so we have a balanced equation. You need to do that for each of these all the way down. Okay, we're almost there, guys, so we're going to go to the next bit now. We're going further down the task, and the next thing you have to do is a discussion. You have part 1. What is precipitation? That's fairly simple. You actually have that information further up in the book. If I go up in the book, it actually tells you precipitation. So you can actually read that there. You need to put that into your own words. Okay. Then how do you know that a product from a reaction is a precipitate from the balanced equation? So we go into this and we said, yeah, there's a precipitate here, but how do we know? Is it this one or is it that one from the balanced equation? We've missed something, and if you go back up to the first equation in the book, you'll see something different. They've included these little state descriptors down here. AQ stands for aqueous, which means what, Ms. Woodruff?
It means that the compound has been dissolved in water.
Right. So this one here is aqueous. It's not there. It's not the precipitate. This one here says S. It's solid. It means that the compound has not dissolved, or in a precipitate reaction, it is the precipitate. So the question is, how can you tell from the equation whether something is a precipitate? It means that you have to see the states on it, and you can see that from that equation. So that's nice and easy. You can do that one. Part 2 is just a little bit more difficult. It asks you what type of reaction has taken place. In order to help you with this, I've actually found some websites for you to look at, and I'm going to tell you what those websites are. You can type them in here as www.tinydurl.com/MSc-chem-1. And when you press enter, that will take you to a website I've selected for you to help you understand what's going on. It's loading in now. Here we go. There you go. You can read through this page carefully and try and understand what's going on. If you have problems understanding this, you can email me at school. Okay? You can just click on my name and send an email to me. But I won't read it until the second week of holidays. So if you need to talk to me, you'll have to wait till the second week of holidays. Okay, so that's question 2. Yeah? So you have to tell me what type of reaction has taken place, and then you have to describe what changes have taken place in the product. And that's what we told you before. How sometimes when there's a reaction, what happens is, Woodruff?
Sometimes the precipitate, or the 2 parts change.
They swap partners. The copper swaps with the potassium. So instead of having copper sulfate, you end up with copper iodide. Instead of starting with potassium iodide, you end with potassium sulfate. The ends swap places. Then you have to answer why has this occurred. The information to answer that question is in the link I sent you. Okay? Just then. Okay, then you have the next section. Why does a precipitate form in some reactions and not others? And the important thing to look up there is something called solubility. That's spelt solubility. S-O-L-U-B-I-L-I-T-Y. If you look up solubility, you'll find the answer to that question. We're nearly finished now. There's only 2 things left to do, which is answer these here. You have a conclusion, which is saying what you learned from the experiment and particularly responding to the aim that you wrote earlier. And the very last thing is...
The aim is at the beginning of the booklet.
Yeah, so if I go right back, you can see it right at the beginning of the booklet. Here it is here. Here is the aim. Yeah? The aim is what is supposed to happen in this experiment, why you are doing this experiment. And no, you can't just say because the teacher told me to. Okay? So here we're back to the conclusion. And then the final one is if you have any ideas about what experiments you could do or what reactions you could do that would make the experiment better, this is where you write it. Okay. Please, boys, remember to carefully read through the rubric at the beginning, which tells you what we expect to see. Okay? Look, there are lots of marks for doing those discussion and conclusion. Yeah? There are lots of marks for doing that. You need to do those questions well to get good marks. And remember that if you don't answer the questions, or you answer without any reference to your own results, you'll have to do it again. So do be very careful about that. Okay, guys, I hope you have a really good holidays other than that. That's from me.
And I would say, please, boys, do your best to have a go at this. If you have problems, email Mr.G in the second week, but do try, because you're already a little bit behind because you missed that last class, which was important.
Okay. Yeah. I hope you guys have a good holidays other than that, and eat lots of Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Good on you. Bye, boys.